Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Culture Philosophers. I'm Rockin Robbie Billups, and it's time for the weekly comic book review. That's right everybody, thanks for checking out the video. I am Rockin Robbie Billups. This is the weekly comic book review. It's the show where I read a lot of comics, and I'll let you know what I thought about them. But before we get to that, I just want to point out that Friday night, 7 p.m. Central Time, join us for the Best Comics of the Month stream. We usually do them on Thursday, but this week we're doing it Friday, 7 p.m. Central Time. Join me, Manny, Nick, and who else we shall see to talk about the best comics of May 2023. And we always start here, though, with the pick of the week, and this week's pick of the week, The Punisher number 12, y'all. It has proved itself to me. I adore this book. This is the final issue of this iteration of Jason Aaron's Punisher run. He's been joined by artists Jesus Saez, Paul Azaceta, Polly A, and Jesus. Well, anyway, the artwork has been fantastic in this book all the way through. Two very different styles. One very clean and rendered like very three-dimensionally, and then the other one a little bit more line work driven, a little bit more gritty, a little bit more textured, and you couldn't have two more opposite styles, but they work together because one is set in the present, one is set in the past, and it just kind of works. The art has been fantastic throughout. The whole run has basically been the Punisher becomes the beast of the Hand. He's like their messiah. He's imbued with this power. He leads the Hand because they brought his dead wife back, Maria. But there's more to it than that. And this story has illuminated so much about Frank's past, his road to being the Punisher. It has illuminated so much about Maria, her relationship to Frank, but also just her as a well-rounded character in and of itself. It has done things that other Punisher runs have done, like Greg Rucka's Punisher run, how it ultimately led to a confrontation with the Avengers. That has happened here, but it feels different, and it feels weighty, and it feels heavy, and it feels incredibly well done. I loved this book, and they completely nailed this ending. This may be my favorite Jason Aaron comic I have ever read. Seriously. And he has another great run on Punisher. Punisher Max Volume 2, Jason Aaron, out of continuity, set in its own universe kind of Punisher story with Steve Dillon. That was really good stuff. But man, this packs a punch. And I will dare to say, and it's a little early, but right now, in a just read it kind of way, I will dare to say that this has now usurped Punisher Born as my favorite Punisher story of all time. Perfect ending. Perfect story, great pacing, amazing artwork. It was consistent, and it's gone. This was Marvel's most consistent and best book out there, and now it's gone. But who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? But what a team, what an achievement, what a book. Punisher. Holy crap. I mean, I talk a lot of smack about Marvel sometimes, but they have been winning me over with this book. But now it's done. We shall see what happens. Well, let's talk about Amazing Spider-Man 26. Okay. Amazing Spider-Man to me has been very inconsistent. Certain stories I really like. Like, I really loved the Tombstone story. I really liked the Hobgoblin story. I like John Romita Jr.'s artwork. Yes, obviously, something is missing. I don't mind it. It's still something about the coloring, the way the coloring is trying to render it more so than the line work. That kind of bothers me. Anyway, aside from that, I like this book for the most part, but it's been up and down. And y'all know I have not been the biggest fan of this current story where there's this demon dude, something from another reality. They're trying to explain what's going on with Mary Jane, why she got a new dude, why she got these two kids. They've been building up to a big death, and they promised that someone dies here. And then they spoiled it like 2 weeks ago. And then I guess I spoiled it here on the channel when we had a conversation about it, and I put the thumbnail up. So if that did spoil something for somebody that didn't know, I'm really sorry. I felt that it was news, so we should cover it. Anyway, I'm not going to spoil who dies right here, but I'm just going to say this. It's dumb as shit. It's dumb as shit. It's so stupid. It is such a bait and switch is what it's trying to do, right? And what's the point of a bait and switch if you reveal it, okay? And then, what? I can't really explain too much as to why I don't like this issue and why I don't like the death in here without really spoiling it, so we'll talk about it some other time, I guess. I don't know. I didn't like it. I thought it was dumb as shit. And if Marvel wants to pull that quote from me, they're more than welcome to. When they collect this, you know, Rockin Robbie, Pop Culture Philosopher, says dumb as shit. Anyway, Carnage. Carnage is here. Carnage, issue number 13. It's part of the Carnage Reigns crossover right now with Miles Morales. Red Goblin's going to be a part of that. I like this issue. I've been really liking Carnage, and what's crazy is that even though Rom V was doing it, I wasn't that excited about Carnage, and it wasn't really clicking with me at all, right? And I was very disappointed in Carnage and Venom. Well, Venom continues to kind of disappoint me a little bit, but Carnage solidified. And at the end of the Rom V section of this run, I was like, holy cow, should have trusted Rom the entire time, because everything looking back in hindsight was leading up to these moments, and it's cool. Now Alex Packnadel is on the book. He is such an accomplished, intelligent writer, and he's doing Carnage. We don't deserve this world we live in which Rom V and Alex Packnadel are the writers on Carnage. That's freaking awesome. That being said, I like this book. It's a crossover with Miles Morales and the Carnage Reigns Alpha or whatever, right? And the Miles book worked as kind of a clean slate. Like, even if you didn't read Carnage Reigns, you could have just, if you were reading Miles Morales Spider-Man, continued on. If you're reading Carnage, you can continue on too. Yeah, actually, but it does, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. As far as, I will say this, it's not as new reader-friendly as that Miles Morales chapter was, but I guess the idea is if you're reading Carnage, you're kind of plugged right into what's going on, and you should have read the Carnage Reigns story for sure. Alex is a great writer. He's a friend. I really like this book. I think it's solid. The art, though, there are elements in here where the art kind of works, but maybe it's just too bright. I need some more. It's crazy because there's heavy black usage in here. In fact, there's like some really great scenes where there's great spotting of blacks, and it's kind of creepy, but there's something. This is more of a kinetic kind of style, and I need a little bit more grit and texture to my Carnage art. That's the only thing, is that throughout this entire run, I haven't really felt like the art has matched the tone of the story. Then we got Doctor Strange issue number 3. Jed MacKay doing what Jed MacKay does great, which is telling self-contained superhero stories that work as an individual issue, that doesn't leave you feeling cheated or that you're missing something or that you got to come back next week, but also building an ongoing narrative around it. This is basically Doctor Strange and Dormammu having their yearly parlay. So once a year or once every so often, Dormammu and Doctor Strange get together and they just chat, talk. Nobody's allowed to hurt each other. But there's this really cool element in which Dormammu like finds one of his followers who will allow themselves to be possessed by Dormammu, and it's going to kill them within just a few hours. So every time they have this parlay, Doctor Strange has to watch an innocent die willingly. So that was a really cool kind of tweak to it. Pascal Ferry's artwork is great, but I liked the issue. I thought it was great, and actually, out of all the Jed MacKay Doctor Strange stuff, and that includes the Strange book with Clea, and that includes the Death of Doctor Strange, this has been my favorite issue. That was actually a top-notch issue. Then we got, speaking of Doctor Strange, a Doctor Strange appearance in It's Clobberin' Time, or it's just called Clobberin' Time, actually. Issue number 3, this is kind of like a Marvel 2-in-1, right? It's like a modern-day Marvel 2-in-1 Thing team-up book. First issue was Hulk, second issue, Wolverine, third issue, Doctor Strange. It has a very non-serious approach. It is not taking itself seriously. It is a little tongue-in-cheek. It is a little ridiculous, but man, it is awesome. And the artwork is freaking fantastic because it's Steve Skroce. Now, I am a fan of Steve Skroce. His writing can be a bit stiff sometimes, and even in the humor in this book, but I'm mostly showing you very dynamic pages. The second half of this book, or maybe the final third, was definitely the best. There are times where the writing just kind of clunks it up just a little bit, but the artwork alone is awesome. Steve Skroce doing a Marvel book. Someone at Marvel is making some really good decisions on allowing creators to come in and do things. Like, hey, Steve Skroce, you want a Thing book? Hey, Trad Moore, you want a Doctor Strange book? Can we get more of that? Now, I briefly read through this. Venom Lethal Protector, I like the throwback. I like the Silver Sable stuff. I appreciate the idea of this book. But honestly, I was like, you know what? I'm not getting anything out of it. And all I got to tell you is it's just big, dumb Venom fun. That being said, that's the cover of the week right there. Now, I was thinking about giving it to Detective Comics because that's a great cover. And I know that this is just an homage, but Paulo Rivera, I believe that's who that artist is. I know that doing an homage and picking that for cover of the week can feel like a cheat, but this is actually an homage done right. First of all, it's just a badass image of Venom with a machine gun, and then you got the Jim Steranko, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Homage there, which is pretty cool. So that's the cover of the week for me. It's a light week, by the way. 5th Wednesday, but we didn't got no blues about it. We got DC Pride. Very light week for DC, but they have a Power Girl special. I didn't read it. I know a lot of people are going to be buying this because there's some cool covers. But I didn't read that because I'm just not digging that direction for Power Girl. But DC Pride I did read because, in the most part, it's got a fan-frickin-tastic lead-in story by Grant Morrison and Hayden Sherman. You telling me that my favorite writer of all time and one of my favorite comic book artists of the modern era are working together for the first time on a multiversity type story involving like a different Green Lantern named Flashlight and like lost love and through the multiverse and all kinds of weird Grant ideas and Hayden's amazing artwork, shifting styles, doing what they need to do to make this work. It sings. It sings. The other stories are okay too. There's a really cool story in there with Crush and Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. There's a Connor Hawke, Tim Drake story that I liked. For the most part, I liked all the stories, celebrations of Alphabet Mafia in the DC Universe creators and characters, and I applaud that, and I think that's fucking awesome. DC Pride 2023, though, the selling point is that Grant Morrison, Hayden Sherman story, and a very touching series of tributes to Rachel Pollack, one of them written by our buddy Joe Corallo. Man, and it touched me and brought a tear to my eye. So this is definitely, out of all the Pride books I've ever read, all the anthologies, this has been the most touching, the most special to me, and the most heartfelt. I really actually like that one. Then we got Detective Comics here with 1072. Ron V doing what Ron V's been doing on Batman, making this big, bold, beautifully tragic, epic, operatic Batman tale. I'm loving it. Everything that has been set up starts doing this in this issue. They go kunk, 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 whoom, right? And it hits a point. Then you got a backup story by Dan Waters that's absolutely sensational. Great artwork. That was almost the cover of the week because that's Solomon Grundy right there. The line work on that is absolutely freaking stunning. Detective Comics is an amazing run. Cannot wait to see how that story is going to fully develop. All right, from Image, we got The Savage Strength of Star Storm. This is from Drew Craig, who I believe is Wes Craig's brother, and it's got some decent enough artwork. There's some cool things with like perspective, but it's a very kind of run-of-the-mill cliche superhero story with a little bit of space opera attached to it. It had some interesting moments. I think this would work way better if it was just a little bit more oddball, a little bit more quirky, and maybe even black and white. If this felt truly underground, maybe that would bring some different sort of identity, but having just read this book, it's like very cliche, dull, and it didn't do anything to really grab me. But Worldtree #2 sure frickin' did. I cannot believe how amazingly subversive and slightly transgressive this book is. For James Tynion, for a mainstream book from a mainstream artist, and I know, or creator, I know that we can't really... Is it indie? Is it... Yes, it's indie. This is independently made, distributed by Image. James Tynion is a hell of a writer, and he has some great ideas, and he's able to continue to develop them in very interesting ways. Worldtree is about the undernet, this dark, almost mythical and mystical type force that exists on the internet, and there's so many stories in this issue, and the way they all kind of are paced together, you get a little bit of this, great conversation, great dialogue, you move on, and honestly, it had been a while since I read issue #1, and I was kind of like, oh, I don't remember much about issue #1 except for the concept and this chick who's just killing people completely nude, right? which I think is badass, actually. And if they ever adapt this to a movie or a show, like, please, please keep that in, because that's badass and quite hot. I'm going to be honest with you. But Worldtree, number 2, great character interactions, brings you right back into the story, sets it all up, and the way this is paced is expertly well done. Let me show you some of the amazing artwork and coloring. Make sure it's an appropriate page. Got to cover that little bit up right there. But no, absolutely great. Composition is amazing. The effects, what's going on, and a real big heavy moment towards the end. Worldtree is something I'm really excited for. I know everybody's talking about something's killing the children. I've always been like Department of Truth. This feels more in line of like with Department of Truth, which I think is something a little bit less mainstream, a little bit more subversive, and slightly transgressive. I'm not saying that this is super transgressive, because it's not. Anyway, Deep Cuts issue number 2. I thought it was a one-shot, but it is a series, a 6-issue series. Second issue is here. It's a different character, a different story, all centered around music, all centered around jazz music. This one's about a woman who's writing a Broadway play, a musical, and she's trying to find one song to write that's going to be a hit. She goes on assignment to basically write a jazz song within a weekend that's going to be the best jazz song of all time. And she learns that she doesn't really know what she's talking about. She's getting in over her head, and jazz is a little bit more complex and complicated than that. But she learns. This was awesome. I actually enjoyed issue 2 better than issue 1. This is pick of the week contender type material here and for Worldtree. Kyle Higgins and who else? Because he's got a co-writer on this, I do want to say. Higgins, Clark, Salas, Joe Clark, Kyle Higgins writing. Helena Macelis is the pencils, and Igor Monti is the coloring. Hassan Ansman El-Hal on the lettering. This was really solid. Now, it's big, it's thick, it is $7.99 or $5.99, and it's actually worth it. So I would highly recommend that. If you like the first one, I think you'll like that one even better. Local Man, issue number 4. Tim Seeley and Tony Fleece are absolutely killing it on this book. Local Man is about a dude who used to be a superhero in a 90s image book, right? Not a real one they kind of made up, and on the flip side, they show you that. But what's going on in the flip story that's set in the 90s, in the past, in the extreme days, is reflected in the main story, in which he goes back home now, disgraced, not allowed to use his powers, but somebody is killing supervillains in his own town, and he has to establish a new identity, which is Local Man. I love this book. Tim Seeley and Tony Fleece do a great job of just bringing it together, pacing it out. Tony's artwork is amazing. Wasn't expecting some of the really solid storytelling, honestly. Actually, I underestimated him, because you think of him as the Stray Dogs, My Little Pony guy, and I've met the guy, I've had a beer with the guy, I love the guy. But Tony, if you're watching, holy shit, I underestimated you and your chops at storytelling. Bruh, you are amazing at this. So thank you so much for that. That's dope. Then we got Torrent issue number 4, a book that nobody at my shop reads but me. And I haven't heard anybody else really talk about it, but I like it. It is basically a payback revenge tale with a superhero flair. This woman, she loses her husband, almost loses her son, because one of her supervillains discovers her secret identity. But the police can't help her. Her own superhero team can't help her, so she goes rogue. She goes vigilante. She starts taking these mother effers out, right? And now her own team is coming after her. It sounds like a cliche story, something we've seen before. Yeah, for sure. But Guggenheim and company, Greenwood and whatnot, they know how to make this story pop. They know how to give it some grit. They know how to give it some energy. And I've 4 issues through. I've been having a lot of fun with that one. Scorched, issue number 18. Sean Lewis taking a great advantage here with Scorched. A teen book. He's able to juggle all of these characters so freaking well. We got Monolith back, or it is Monolith, right? Monolith, what the hell's his name? Monolith. Man, the artwork, there's some big, exciting pages, and this is what you want from a Spawn book. You want a couple images that you're just like, whoa! You want the story to move and progress a little bit forward, but this one has got revelations, it's got deaths, it's got surprises, it's got some twists, and it's got some turns, and Sean Lewis and company are able to handle that magnificently well. Then we got The Rocketeer. It's a one-shot comic from IDW. Now, this one has work from the writers of the original movie, I believe. And I think it's the Adam Hughes story. Some of this might be reprinted material. I'm not super sure. I've read the Dave Stevens stuff, that graphic novel, one time. I've read some stuff here and there. But first story, drawn by Adam Hughes, and it's basically about the Rocketeer's friendship with Amelia Earhart. The second story is probably the more meatier of all of them. It's got solid artwork. I don't know who the artist is, but it's decent enough. And it's a nice, light, fun, kind of like typical Rocketeer story. And then the final story is very, very brief, but it is also by Jay Lee, and it soars because it's Jay Lee. So there you go. From IDW, we got Catfight issue number 1. This was a real big surprise for me. This is kind of like your sleeper hit of the week. I wasn't expecting much out of this book, but I actually really liked it. The artwork's pretty cool. Some really cool composition is going on here. Storytelling is decent enough, but the composition, the layout, those big moments, they actually hit when they need to hit. This is about a dude. He's like a notorious cat burglar. He's got skill. He's out there just kind of making it. His grandmother is one of the greatest cat burglars ever and has his whole team, but he's kind of ostracized from her. He doesn't really know about her past. And then outside forces are trying to get them to team up. But there's a lot of interesting relationship dynamics going on in this book. It had a nice flair to it. It was a little wordy, but it felt like it was very kind of tightly structured and paced. And the flow was pretty solid. So Catfight number 1, I liked it. I actually rather like that book. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures, issue number 1. This is volume 2 of the series. Eric Burnham is doing a continued great job. He was the one who did the last one. If you like the animated series of Turtles, this is the book for you. This one's got Rat King in it. It's got Shredder in it. It's a little bit more lighthearted. It's not as deep or heavy as some of the other Turtle stuff can be, especially when guided by Eastman or Laird, right? But Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures, it just awakens that kid-like nostalgia inside of me. Then we got Barbaric, Hell to Pay, issue number 4. This is the final issue of this series. Brings everything to a very satisfying conclusion. I think now we'll be able to refocus in on this book. I do think that because they tried to make this the year of the Axe, so much Barbaric content coming out, I don't know. It feels like the book has just not lost focused, but just kind of blurred up its focus just a smidge. But it's getting it back together, and the ending of this story kind of sets up a lot of stuff. Very satisfying character moments, actually. And so even though I felt like we were getting a little fuzzy in our focus, it has reshifted that focus at the end, and I'm excited. Some great artwork, maybe a little bit muddy on the colors sometimes. There's some good choices about having like these like warm kind of like I don't know, like having this purple and this orangish kind of lighting on the foreground and the background, but then at the same time, a lot of it just comes across as kind of just the same. And it just kind of blends together on the page if you're looking from afar. Things like this, though, these are pages that really work, and they pop, and that foreground pops from the background, and then other moments it doesn't. But at the same time, those are the hell scenes, so maybe that's intentional. But then we switch to, I don't know, maybe it's intentional. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Barbaric is good, and it's solid. And I feel like we are refocused now in on this book. Anyway, that's all I read. A light week, only 18 books for me. What did you read? What'd you dig? What'd you think? Let us know in the comments below, and we'll do a quick recap. Barbaric, Hell to Pay number 4, refocuses that series. I think it's good. Saturday Morning Adventures, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, awakens that kid-like nostalgia inside of you. Catfight was very cool. Great composition, cool character works. The Rocketeer was quite delightful. If you've never read a Rocketeer book, you want to check one out, check out the Dave Stevens stuff. But then you can also just check that out. The Scorched, very surprising revelatory issue. Torrent, nobody's talking about it but me, I feel, but if you're reading it, please let me know. Local Man, Tony, I mean. Y'all are doing a great job. Deep Cuts, a really solid book right there. Worldtree continues to astound me. Starstorm was just kind of okay. Detective Comics was amazing. DC Pride had some ups and its downs, but altogether pretty consistent. Cover of the week belongs to Venom, Lethal Protector. By the way, the smell of the week is Detective Comics. Detective Comics, smell of the week. Let's give it a sniff. Yeah, Detective Comics. Clobber in Time, great artwork from Steve Scrooge. Doctor Strange, the best issue of Jed MacKay's Strange Stuff yet. Carnage continues to do what Carnage needs to do. It just needs to have art that fits that tone. Amazing Spider-Man is dumb as shit. And Punisher number 12 ends the series immaculately well. I love it. My favorite Punisher series I've ever read. I can't really say that until I reread. Let me reread some Punisher stuff. I'll do a top 5 maybe. I don't know. Anyway, I've been Rockin Robbie Billups. Thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And join us over at patreon.com/PCP if you want to help support the channel. I've been Rockin Robbie Billups. I just said that. Station. Pop, pop, boom.